I don't know. Maybe that's a part of some other franchise chain that escapes my memory at the moment. But it was the exact same logo mark. And I was like, oh,
there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. So lots of things hit the fan. And I was like,
crazy world of branding.
Yeah, I was like, somebody didn't just Google.
Step one in brand establishment. Google it, see if it's already there.
Yeah. So happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast. We're back. I'm Jason. That's Mitch. That's John. And we welcome back Diana Richardson from Semrush. Hey. So, got plenty of stuff there previously for the cold open. So I think we're all good. And we were just chatting about The Crown and Netflix. And I just started watching Downton Abbey. That's right. I'm in season 2 now. That's how far behind I am. One day, maybe I'll watch
You haven't even seen the movie yet. They came out with a movie.
Really? There's a movie?
There's a Downton Abbey movie.
How do you do a movie on this? Like, this is like, I don't want to, it's not boring, but it's not exactly movie stuff. Like, if you just go to Netflix.
It's really interesting.
I mean, you can pretend it's a movie. You just keep watching it on Netflix.
Well, each episode's like an hour and a half anyway, so.
Yeah. I mean, I really love the show Sherlock with, Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
But the stuff like that, I really like. And I don't know, I was just like bored. I mean, there's not really much right now on Netflix. There's something coming out July 3rd, but I don't know. That's all I got. I was like, well, I'm paying for this. I better watch something on it.
We resorted to watching some of the classics during the pandemic. So like my boyfriend and I, we watched Cheers, which I had never seen all the way through and is awesome. And
Isn't it?
It's so good. And it is still really relevant. But what a heck of an ensemble cast. And what else did we were just trying something else. We're really into Dr. Pol right now because we have the Disney Channel, but yeah, we started like all the classic. Oh, we're watching Dallas.
Oh, wow.
Now the old one or the new one?
The old one.
Oh, the old one. Wow.
It's so good.
There's a time.
Oh my God. I am so
There's a time capsule for you.
Yeah. I mean,
of course I did watch that one when it was on live because I don't even think I was like born when it was on, but like it's so good.
Ouch. I remember the guy that just stated earlier, like, I was around before the internet and I remember this in advertising. Like, all right.
Well, I was around like when the internet was just getting started. So I mean, I am that old.
Well, yeah, I remember 94 when everybody was like, oh, there's this thing called email. And I was like,
yeah.
All right.
It took forever. You'd have to like click and like I would go downstairs and like get a snack and come back up and the webpage was halfway loaded and yeah, but then it was so cool. And then chat rooms and oh yeah.
John's got some nerd news or not, sorry, the BrandBit, I'm like all this.
It's all the same.
Yeah. Well,
we're interchangeable.
Yeah, it's interchangeable, but it kind of ties into what we were starting and talking about with Netflix. I was very surprised. I kind of glanced over the notes and I saw it and I was like, what? So John, take it away, man.
Well, to give proper credit, it's from a newsletter called Charter, which I subscribed to like a month ago. And it's like a data-centric data storytelling newsletter. You guys should check it out, and listeners should check it out. It's Charter, but without the E at the end. So it's just CHARTR. And it's I send an email like every, I don't know, maybe once a week. And it's got some really nice charts and just kind of breaks down popular culture, but in a data-oriented way. But this one was about Netflix and Disney Plus, and the setup was kind of like, of course, everybody's been chasing Netflix with these streaming platforms, having seen, the last 8 years or so, Netflix just take the world by storm. Then the pandemic happened, so you got Disney Plus and Paramount Plus and all these other, organizations launching their streaming platforms. And we know Disney makes a ton of their money, or at least it gets a ton of their credibility from apparel sales and selling toys and things like that.
Theme parks.
Yeah. And Netflix has, the big news is that Netflix has launched an e-commerce store to sell like branded materials of their properties. It's netflix.shop is what they've launched. There's not a whole lot on there right now, but And what they do have are titles and properties that I'm not even aware of, which I'm probably not the best arbiter of what's current and what's out there on the Netflix sphere. But it's an interesting development that they're kind of, taking something out of Disney's playbook, and Disney is taking something out of their playbook lately of they're going in different directions. And there was something in the newsletter about theme parks, and that might be Netflix's next.
Okay, I was going to ask.
Focusing on like experiences and things like that. So that's
cool.
Well,
that's a big one.
Sorry, in Virginia, we have a theme park that is movie themed. And I've only been out of Virginia for a year, and now I can't even remember what it's called. But it was only like an hour and a half away from me. And it was all movie themed. So I could see Netflix doing something like that. Oh, King's Dominion. That was what it's called. Huh. And it's all movie themed. Like they had, long story short, it's movie themed.
I think King's Dominion, at least at one time, was in the same family of theme parks as Kings Island, which is in
maybe
Cincinnati, I think.
Okay.
All right. Was one time they were
themed.
Yeah. Well, at one time, I don't know if they technically still there, but they were they were associated with like Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
They had all the Hanna-Barbera characters in the park and things like that. So they were maybe loosely studio themed at one point. Of course, a lot of these theme parks, like Six Flags, have gone through different iterations in their lifetime, because Six Flags was Warner Brothers affiliated for a long time. I mean, there used to be a Six Flags here in Louisville, and they had one section of the park that was revolved around Batman, which as a nerd, I thought was very cool. The other thing that's interesting about the Netflix merchandising thing is it's kind of a shame, and maybe probably a missed opportunity, that they didn't launch this while they still had some of the Marvel properties under their umbrella, like because Daredevil was so popular. Think of the merchandise they could have.
I think that's actually the perfect piece of news for e-commerce SEO topic today, that Netflix of all brands is launching an e-commerce store. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know. And it does seem a little late, given that, during the pandemic, D2C went just through the roof as far as that goes. So it's almost like they're doing it like after all of that. So I don't know, but they're Netflix. They tend to don't worry about trends and things like that anyways. They just do stuff.
What's interesting, and I don't know if this falls completely in line with e-commerce SEO necessarily, but it's kind of an interesting tangent, talking about E3 and video games, and the fact that a lot of the publishers now, they're trying to steer the audiences toward going like downloadable versus going to a store like a GameStop and actually buying a hard copy. I'm a big fan of hard copies of anything, but that's off the point. But anyway, that's e-commerce in and of itself, because you're trying to get people to engage and to make their purchase online. The Guardians of the Galaxy game, all the major platforms like PS4 and 5, the Xbox, et cetera, you're going to be able to buy the physical game. With Nintendo for the Switch, it's going to be you be able to get it through download. Mm-hmm. You're not going to go. You won't go buy You won't go buy the physical game.
But that makes sense for the different device types, right? Because the Switch is, substantially smaller.
Yes.
And it's the iPad of video game consoles, right? It's meant to be in your hand. And
well, it does both. It crosses both.
Yeah, it can sync up with
you can connect it to a television, or you can do it handheld, right?
I think just the format of it in and of itself makes sense for downloadable things versus, and I think they're also, by creating, if you think about the audience that really loves like Guardians of the Galaxy, it's very nostalgic anyways. And then there's so many people like you, Mitch, that love love the hard copies. And so I think like the audience, from an audience targeting perspective, they're really keeping in mind those kinds of characteristics of the people that are actually playing their games, where the people playing on the Switch, a little bit younger, used to downloading apps and things like that, where us who might be playing Guardians of the Galaxy on whatever console it might be, we loved blowing on in our Nintendo games. Like we did, that's what we did. And
why do we do that?
I don't know.
Because it made them work.
Help.
Yes.
It was magic. It made them work.
All of us had the cartridges. All of us would put the cartridge in the machine and it would not turn on. And, as our developer says, you turn it off and repent, turn it back on. Part of that repent,
I like that.
Blow on the thing and then put it back in. I remember that. Thanks for that, Diana. That just took me way back into my childhood right there. I remember a couple of cartridges I got mad at and I just tossed them. Duck Hunt. I hate that dog. Anyway.
That's mean.
The worst.
No dogs were harmed in the production of this podcast.
No, they weren't. Classic game though. That'll probably give you seizures though, because it just does a lot of flashing. Anyway, wow, we're just chasing things around all over the place. So anyway, something to kind of
episode.
yeah, something I wanted to hit on, because you actually had this on another podcast, and I can't remember the name of the podcast. I would plug it, but you guys talked about like how organic SEO is not free, basically. Like there has been this perception that over the years we've kind of possibly shot ourselves in the foot by talking about organic, and organic to the consumer's ears has been free, and yeah, and it's not.
Right. So I was on Morty Openstein's podcast, the SEO Rant podcast, because we were ranting about budget expectations and how you don't want to even cheap out even on the free traffic. Yeah. Not free. Someone has to do it.
Yeah, there's hours involved. Like we had Jason Menard with us on our show a couple weeks ago, and yeah, I mean, it was wonderful having him there, because I mean, the way that he broke down and explained things about how Google works and what it's looking at, you started to get the sense, and he just flat said it took him 3 months to clean up what he had online. It's taken us 6 months to clean up NerdBrand, because the further back you go in the interwebs, the longer you got to start digging things out and cleaning up what you look like. I mean, NerdBrand was a podcast in 2016. So John is always like, hey, Jason, do you have a login to fix this feed? Because it was syndicating to the old show. It's got old episodes. That's not us anymore. It's not even our logo. So, it takes a lot of work. I mean, and that's sort of the thing. It's like, you want that organic traffic, but, you got to tell Google like who you are and what you do.
But you also have to tell people. So, John kind of wanting to fix the feed is a user experience issue too, because now you're misdirecting people who want to be engaged with you, and you're misdirecting them. So there's not just a Google element there, it's a user experience.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to make money online in e-commerce, that's a really bad problem.
Better send them to your products for sale, that's for sure.
Yeah, because people will find the product where they want it. They are not really going to worry about, who it is they're getting it from, if that's all they care about. So that kind of brings the second point that I had, is a website is not just a website. OMG, we are still saying this today as marketers.
Oh, and we may have touched on this the last time too, where we were talking about how the website, like bridging that mind gap that a website is an extension of your business, and how that does not exist anymore. Your website is your business. Like if you have a brick and mortar, your website is your brick and mortar now. Like everyone shops online. I don't care who you are. We are always shopping online. So the energy and time you put into building a great space, like in-person space, needs to go into your website. And because that is where people shop. That is where people research. And, it's almost easier, because before, when we just had in-person shopping options, it was so difficult to know if you were getting the right price, if this product was well received, if it was a quality product. And now we have all of that at our fingertips in one place. And, just creates this environment where we have so many options, but so you have to take value in that. It's not an extension. It's not an accessory. It is your business.
Yeah, you have to treat it with that same attention to detail, and keeping in mind everything goes back to user experience, and user experience is more than just how pretty your site is, and does it make people want to click this button. Yeah. User experience it extends so much further than that. I think
what you just said. Analogies for this, because John's usually not the guy in our organization that comes up with analogies that I think hit the mark. That's usually my ground. But John, you said something about like how they, you can't, when it comes to get a website, you can't buy a Ferrari just to what? See if you remember this.
Just to get to the bus stop. I mean, it's kind of come up. It's like, I don't know, there's this expectation or this view of what your website can do for you, that it's supposed to present you credible, it's supposed to give you authority. And then a lot of people stop right there, because that's a very valid, explanation of why have a website, why make a good website. It does give you that credibility and authority when somebody hits it, but it can do so much more than that. And so if you're going to go to the links of getting something like a custom WordPress website, for example, you're kind of buying, like, to some extent, you're buying like the Ferrari of web design and development. And if all you're doing is trying to check one or two little boxes, it's almost like the equivalent of spending however much a Ferrari costs these days just to drive a few blocks to get to the bus stop and then take the bus to work. It's like, wow, what's the point? Like, if you're not gonna have fun with the Ferrari, if you're not gonna use it to its full extent, why spend so much money? Why bother to begin with?
But I think the opposite also applies too, because if you're, as business owners, you're clearly invested in making this a success. So why would you cheap out on that? Why would you buy, the 1995 Honda Civic that has 217,000 miles on it just to go to the bus stop?
Right.
Because if you're not going to put in the care and the focus on something like that, then just stay offline because it's not going to work and you're going to be frustrated and it's not going to be a success because and I think that was part of what Morty and I were talking about with the free traffic and the expectations around SEO being free traffic, and that if you don't invest in SEO, you're only going to get half the results, and you can't buy more results with a bigger budget, but you can buy better UX, you can buy stronger content, you have the budget to get the custom WordPress site built and create an online experience that mirrors your in-person experience. And I think if I'm looking into my crystal website ball here, I think that is the future of websites because everyone has one now. Now we need to create that virtual online experience for our audiences, and not just easy navigation and nice professional pictures and keywords that got you to rank. It needs to be as if you are going to the store, and brands and businesses need to think about what that means for them. And when someone takes the time to come into your physical location, what can they expect there? Why did they make that decision? And how can you replicate that? I have a really great example, actually. I used to work at where I used to work before Semrush. I worked for this wonderful branding and creative agency. And we actually worked with this sunflower maze. It was a farm. And each year they grew sunflowers. And it was beautiful, and it was fun, and it was family friendly, and you were outdoors. And they loved having the pictures, of the sunflowers, but they created such an engaging social media experience that it's like one of the most incredible Facebook pages I've ever had the pleasure of working on, because we were able to replicate the attraction of going to this maze on Facebook and engage people that way. And that's how people need to think about their websites and their social media too, I think, in the future, because
exactly
Google doesn't buy from you, it's people.
Right. You need to mimic as much as you possibly can and highlight the positive aspect that people will like about engaging with your physical presence on that website. You have to get them, if at least enough of a taste that they can anticipate, I'm going to have a fulfilled version of this if I need to go to their physical location.
Yeah.
If you don't have a physical location, it's even more, you've got to do even more. You have to create a completely positive, completely engaging experience right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But when you get a website, and I'm going to try to not be too techie with this. So you get a physical location. I'm going to go down the analogy path here, but I'm not going to do Ferraris and bus stops because that's a good one. We're saving that for later, no matter what, anyway.
It's right up there with Gumball Machine.
It really is. That's another one that John's building axioms right now in his library over the last year and a half.
That's my job.
Yeah, he's taking it. But no, it's like, so you go out, if business owners, I think if they put in the amount of effort that they put into getting a physical location and researching how much square footage they need now and they think they will need in 5 years, in revenue to cover that growth and expansion and all that, if there was that much effort, I think, put into their website and their brand, they would be a lot happier with the results. Because what happens is, imagine a world where your website, like you said, it's a front door. It is your business now. But you kind of chinced on the hosting, and you kind of got a solution that's one of those overnight do-it-yourself things. I mean, we talk about turnkey websites on our blog, and you've kind of done this, okay? And you got like, oh, I got it, it's up and running. Well, the problem is it's up and running, but as your business grows, as more people show up, you got a brick and mortar building that doesn't have the capacity that meets the fire code. And you have to tell people, I can't let you in, which sounds like great. Well, they'll just be in a line outside. Yeah, but that's not how the web works. Now they're just going someplace where there isn't a line.
Exactly.
So the thing about that is that has directly to do with the technology you've decided to use to build your site on. It's not a WordPress problem, by the way. That is a server, hardware, whatever it is that you're deciding to put WordPress on, because WordPress is self-hosted. You can put it anywhere. But those resources and what you're thinking about for your infrastructure, this kind of gets into IT a little bit, but that's very important, because traffic is like, we talk about traffic in SEO, but in web, it's like, well, it's bandwidth. We just don't have the bandwidth of that site to handle this many people logged in, making edits, this many people visiting and researching product and checking out. And if they have a bad experience and the site times out and white screen of death occurs on your website where they're trying to pay for that thing they really wanted, they're going to get mad and they're going to go someplace else, and you're never getting them back. And so it's really taking the time to plan out and being very optimistic with it. And it's really hard, because sometimes this happens pre-revenue, but you got to be really optimistic, almost to a delusional point as a business owner, that I'm going to spend the money on this for this site, for the brand, for the infrastructure that's going to be there, because I believe what I'm doing is going to work, and I'm going to be here in 5 to 10 years. And if I do it right here, I don't have to worry about the headaches and the expense that will be 10 times that, plus all the blind costs, all the blind lost revenue that I can't measure and I will never see. That should scare the crap out of anybody that runs a business. That all happens because at the beginning, the foundation wasn't really thought out, if that makes sense.
That's a really good point. And I think just websites in general don't, because it's not the copy, it's not the image, the images on the site, the behind the scenes architecture is very difficult for business owners who are not website builders, to think about. But you're right, like it's very short-sighted to do the quick and easy if you have and not invest in the long-term quality tech, because you really do need something that's agile, because without being a tech person, the internet changes on a minute by minute basis, and having an agile framework, something that can be flexible and mobile with your changing business needs, and then switching, prioritizing mobile. That wasn't a thing 5 years ago. That just happened. Like that happened in the last 5 years. But if you had an really outdated framework, it was really hard for you to jump on this mobile initiative. And it's all built in now, but it wasn't like that 5-6 years ago. Yeah. And then I was going to say something else. Oh, I was going to say though, too, don't let this scare you though, too, because poor frameworks and poor UX happen to the biggest brands. And I'm going to give a real life example, and bless their hearts, they're a wonderful business, but they have a terrible UX, and that is Ticketmaster. I was my boyfriend and I, we live here in Texas, and I got him Cowboys tickets for his birthday, and I was trying to buy them the day they went on sale, and I went through Ticketmaster 3 times, and it said it could not complete my transaction on my MacBook, my very updated MacBook. And so I switched computers. I came onto my work computer, and it let me do it there. But like, what?
But see, what's interesting is
I want to take a snippet of what you just did, Diana. What? Because that's really like, that's a great, right? That's a meme. That needs to be your.
Like, you have one job. You have one job, and that's to sell tickets.
But see, Ticketmaster has been notorious for this kind of thing, though. I mean, since before people were buying tickets online. I mean, it's just, even when it was phone-based, for some reason, they have never had an infrastructure in place for selling their product that was user-friendly, ever.
They don't have to. That's the beauty of having a semi-monopoly.
Yeah.
You're right. No, you're right. You're right. People have been complaining about this for as long as there have been concerts, I think.
Not
But
the beauty.
Well, maybe not that far, but
that feeling of frustration.
Online ticket sales for concerts.
But that feeling of frustration, imagine that against your own brand if you're out there listening. Imagine that feeling about you and your brand online. That's horrible. You know, you don't really want that. And there's ways to figure out if that's the case.
You do testing, Ticketmaster. You do testing.
You do some
It was
testing.
on an upgraded MacBook. Like,
they say
my desktop from a million years ago. Okay, maybe doesn't work with my browser or whatever at the time, but literally, it's an almost brand new MacBook.
I've had people say to me, like, can you put a notice on the website to recommend that they use this specific browser? And I'm like, well, if you have to do that, you did it wrong.
Yeah,
those days are over, folks.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be back in the day, we would do development and we would optimize for the low end user. When I say optimize, I don't mean SEO. I just mean like site performance for a page to load.
The tech stuff.
The content. Yeah. All the techie stuff. And by the way, the low end user was anybody running IE 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And this is like 2010. So this is not that long ago. That was not a thing in 2010. They were already on like 11 or something for IE.
Mm-hmm.
But IE did not die because of people like me, because we kept making websites and making sure they were backwards compatible for those two things of a browser. And you know, it kind of came out later that's what happened, because then they were like, oh, we'll just drop support. It was like, well yeah, stop making sites for things that don't work anymore. And nobody's building a website that only works on an iPhone 3G.
Yes.
Or talking on one, for crying out loud. So I mean, you know, it's sort of like you've got to think about low end users. But when we do it, we think about it like, you know, we understand that PCs are still prevalent amongst businesses because of IT firms. We know that work from home situations, not everybody's got a high-speed internet connection in the way that a business pays for. So things have had to change. And now if it comes back around the other way, web can actually start, I think there'll be more innovations because the optimization for the hardware and for the connections are there now. Because your home internet connection is made for online shopping and watching Netflix. You know, it's not really made anymore for like, I mean, you may have a VoIP system, you may be talking through it on the phone if you got one of those quote unquote bundles or whatever. But at the end of the day, the home internet services were not really for business, and they've kind of had to become that with all the work from home. So that's a piece that I don't think anybody thinks about really. And that kind of ties into infrastructure and all that getting updated. So web's about to get really fast. If your website isn't prepared for any of that, if your brand's not prepared for any of that, you're in a really bad position. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but you just are. Yeah, you just are. You know, I've had a lot of heartbreaking stories this week, meeting a lot of people, talking to a lot of business owners. I mean, they've spent tens of thousands of dollars on things that, you know, they're coming to us and I had the one thing like, oh, but some of my web pages don't have a meta description. And I'm like, that's not what's important. And, you know, it's like, there's a bunch of other problems. And unfortunately, the money's already been spent because they kind of bought into, you know, some of these codeless design service platforms that I'm struggling to hold behind my teeth and not name because I hate them. And, you know, because what happens is that you want to look like the polished professional site online. That's your vision in your head, whatever that looks like for everybody, because it's different for everyone. And you have this vision of your product being on there and it being successful. But the platform, you don't know really. I mean, you're going to a website that's telling you like, you can lay this out, you can do this, you can do that. And I think that's probably the problem. It's saying you. And agencies are kind of made to help with that. They have internal teams that do strategy. They're a part of that foundation I was talking about earlier. I just wish there was a way to convince that more.
No, they're the ones that have the experience because they've worked with multiple websites at this point, right? So by the time you get to the agency, they've had their hands in lots of varieties of sites and they've made mistakes and they've failed and they've learned. So you're also paying for like that experience, which is only going to help you not make those same mistakes. So there's so much value in finding an agency that you really, really trust and that you can collaborate with, because it's a team effort to express that vision. But then on the agency side, it's interpreting that vision, but also making sure you are with the best technology and creating the user funnels and creating that architecture that is going to lead to conversions, which is the goal of the website. So it's very valuable to make that connection with an agency from that standpoint.
Tell the people where they can find you, just in case they missed it on the first episode with us.
Yeah, no problem. So you can find Semrush all over social media, including TikTok. We are on TikTok now. And we are Semrush across the board. We actually just had, I don't know when this is going to air, so I won't date this, but we just recently launched a whole new re-engineering of our backlinks analytics tool suite. It's all 5 tools in one. It's pretty spectacular if you are in the backlinking part of your SEO journey. I am on LinkedIn and Twitter. You can just LinkedIn my search. I was going to say Google my name on LinkedIn, but that didn't make sense. So you can LinkedIn my name, Diana Richardson. I have a wine glass next to my name, and I am Diana Rich013 on Twitter.
Yep. And then to kind of shamelessly plug ourselves, you can go to nerdbrandagency.com/podcast. Check out this episode of the podcast. You can go to YouTube, like, subscribe, click the bell, get the latest episode notification. Do the YouTube things, guys out there and gals. Just do those things for us. We would love to get a vanity URL. We're still trying to get that. We're young, we're new, we've only been there for a year and a half. So, but you can also probably go to nerdbrandagency.com/Semrush if we can do that. And then you can actually get you an account with them and check out this new tool, and, and then call John or email John.
Talk to Diana.
Yeah. And then, because then.
Yeah, or talk to the person who works at Semrush.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah, all the introductions will happen, and you'll actually have a real SEO, search engine marketing plan going. So that's kind of what we want to help you with. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to the show. Thank you, Diana, for being with us. And we'll tell everybody out there, remember, keep your nerd brain strong.